Okay, the next topic is encryption or network security. And specifically, we're talking about encryption today. So first, the network security is a topic of great importance, obviously, and we are more, in today's talk, we'll be talking about the security of actual communication. So if you send a message, is to ensure that that message arrives without any modifications, without any, if somebody sends you a message that you know that it came from that person and not for somebody else signing their name and a false name, and a number of other issues like confidentiality, nobody can read it, and integrity, it has not been modified, and authenticating the message that it came from the right user or authenticating the actual user. So there are a lot of standards, international standards that were made in the topic or area of security, information security, and communication security. And they all tend to talk about, well, they, in great details, about attacks, mechanisms, and services. Attacks are the type of attacks that can happen on information security in general. And the services are what you try to protect and ensure in information security. Things like confidentiality, you want to make sure the information remains confidential, for example, and only the right user logs in or gets access to records, like somebody who works in a company or in a hospital, and they log in and get information. They should only be authorized people getting that information, so maybe access control and authentication, and these come under the services that need to be provided. And security mechanisms is how these things are provided, how these security services are provided, or defense against the security attacks. So looking at the attacks first, an attack, any action that compromises the security of the information. So anything that, if you have confidential information, you don't want many other people to see it, so if somebody gets to see it, that's an attack, who was not authorized to see it. Or if you have information that you've saved and you think it's safe, and somebody gets in and modifies it unexpectedly and unknowingly, we say the integrity of the data has been, violated, and so on. So this is any attack that changes, that performs anything on the information that should not have been done. And in the older days, they used to have another term called the threat. A threat or an attack, and a threat is you can make an attack. There's maybe the information is vulnerable or the system is vulnerable, that somebody could actually make that attack. But that's called a threat. Until actually somebody does something and makes an attack, then. But nowadays they say, listen, if there is a threat, if there is possibility you could be attacked, maybe they consider it like it's as if you have an attack. So they use them now interchangeably. The word threat is the same as attack. That means you have a weakness in your system and you need to immediately protect it if you can. Right, attacks, they come in two types. There are two types of attacks. That's what you need to know, is that there's one that's called an active attack, where the attacker actually does something, go in and modify your data, or go in and delete your files, or log in under false name and password. Like I get your password and I go to the system and log in, put in your name, and I play your password as if it's me. I'm pretending to be you. That's called masquerading. So that's an active attack. The attacker actually is doing something more than just, more than the passive attack. And the passive attack, where the attacker just listens only and watches. So he can see your information going and he keeps reading it. They shouldn't be reading it. But they do not change it, they don't modify it, they don't ask for it, they don't block it, but they just read. And that's also a bad attack. Some people ask them, which one is more dangerous, passive or active attack? But they're both bad. But the active attack, if somebody deletes one of your files, you will find out pretty quick, and you'll investigate it, you'll find the reason, how did they do it, and then you prevent them. You take the right action. It doesn't happen again. The problem with passive attacks, they don't modify information, but they know your information. They keep reading. For example, somebody sits outside the college and starts getting a copy of every information leaving the college on the internet. So they can read it. They're not modifying it, they're not doing it. It's so simple to pick the information. And this kind of attack, even though they don't change much of the information, but they do get access. They get to know things that they shouldn't have known. And the worst part of this is that can go on for years and you'd never know. There's nothing that happens that gives you any sign or indication that somebody's been listening to you for the last 5 years, for example. Maybe somebody's listening to all your phone calls. That's called a passive attack. They don't do nothing, they don't talk, they don't interfere, but they know all your plans, they can see or read all your information. And of course, if you are in a very sensitive area, in a government area, or a military area, or a very kind of high technical factory or company, and you're sending information from your branch to another branch of the company, and your competitors are reading all this information. It can be very, very sensitive and very costly and very difficult to know about this system. But okay, so that's the kind of attacks. Now we look at the services, and the services can be classified into the following. We're not classified, these are the services specified by many of the protocols that were out, and this is one of the protocols, x800, and they define these services. So confidentiality, they're reasonably simple. You know, you probably received a letter with the word confidential written on it. That's a confidential piece of information. What does it mean? Anybody knows what confidential means? In general, most people will say it means nobody can read that information. Well, no, that's not true. You can read that information. So some people say, all right, information only can be read by one person. That's confidential. No. Confidential information can be read by a group of people and still be confidential to this group. So there's a nice word to remember in this course, authorized. Authorized, I mean somebody who has the authority to see it or has the permission to see something or do something. We use it a lot in this course. So confidentiality is the protection or being able only to disclose information, I mean show information or make it available to authorized personnel only or authorized party. So only those who are authorized. So protection, confidentiality is the protection of data from unauthorized access or not access, disclosure. Okay, what about integrity? When we talk about the integrity of data, what does that mean? Is that the data was not changed by an unauthorized change. Don't say, if integrity, it says here, that you send a message and the message is received without any change. But you could also be storing the message in your system, in the company or your computer. You store a file, come back a week later and pick it up and the file is changed. Is that integrity has an integrity happened or integrity violation taken place or not? Or is the integrity of the data or the file still protected or not? It depends. on the change. Is it an authorized change? If it's authorized, that's okay. If it was supposed to happen, maybe there are two of you and one of you keeps going in and modifying the data, updating it. That's okay, that's expected and that's normal, for example. But if it happens unexpectedly by unexpected person who got in, or application or program or something, then it's unauthorized change, and then the integrity has been violated. Okay, so if you're asked what's integrity, don't say that means the data is not changed. That's not correct. It might have been changed and still integrity is there. But if it is authorized change, so it's unauthorized changes will attack the integrity of a data. If it's authorized, it's good. Authorized, somebody has the authority to do something, that means we're okay. Whether it's viewing a message, somebody sent a message, and somebody else to you, but someone else saw it. Is the confidentiality gone? It depends. Is the other person authorized to see it? If they are authorized, that means that everything's still okay. If they are unauthorized, then that's authority, confidentiality is gone. Same with integrity. Just make sure if you express it, to express that if it's authorized change or disclosure, then that's okay. It's the problems with unauthorized. Availability. What's availability of a data or a resource? Is making sure it's available, not to everybody. And we might have a printer here. Only 5 people here should use it. Well, everybody else is using it. They shouldn't be using it. Or somebody else other than those 5, one more person found a way to use it. And it became unavailable. That person started blocking it or making it so busy that the normal users who want to use it, they can't use it anymore. If, for example, you have a shop on the internet, you have a web page that you sell items, right? And then users every day go in, 100, maybe 200 users go in and they buy things from you. But then there's a competitor like you who doesn't want you to sell. So what they can do is they can write a program. Remember, every time you type the title on the web, you put the name of website, you hit enter, a request goes to that server, gets its IP address, goes to that server. The server sends you the front page of that website. So that's what happens. If you type, for example, whatever name of a shop or a college, and you hit enter, the request goes from your machine to the server in that college, and that server person says, you want to read our page? Here's our page, and display the page. So one of your competitors can write a program that sends a request to your website. So one request goes in and it's processed in 1 second. And they send you back the page. But you can put it in a loop, and it'll be sending hundreds, thousands, and millions of requests in few seconds. So now your server has a long queue of requests coming from someone else, and they start, you want our web page, here it is, here it is, here it is. Now, you're not a customer, you're just pretending to be. You're wasting the time of the server. Now, a normal customer comes in, their request will put at the end of that line, there'll be 10 million requests in front of it. So it'll probably take 20 minutes before it's processed. And that's called denial of service attack. So if somebody wants to go to a website and put that website out of service, deny normal customers, authorized customers from reaching it, that's what denial of service attack used to do. Just send multiple requests, write a small program with a loop that goes around, and each time you go around, say, give it this link, the address, it go to that address, thousands of times. But of course, they found a solution against it. They put a firewall, and the firewall you can put in the firewall, you can say block any request that comes from this email address. Remember, when your request comes in, routers don't look at source addresses. They're only interested in destination addresses. But if you want to investigate it, then you can open the packet and you look, oh, this one, we got this packet from this address. You look at the next packet, same address. Next packet, they're all coming from your address. So what they can do is they come in firewall, the firewall, you can put list of addresses to block. So if anything comes from that, it doesn't even get to the server. It's blocked right at the entrance of the network. Anyway, so that's called availability. Is that the resource is available to the normal customers, authorized customers, not available. So if you're asked what's availability, don't say the resource is available to everybody. That would not be right. It might only need to be available to one person. That's fine. That's the authorized person. As long as it's available to that person, it's good. If it's not available to this authorized person, then that's when denial of service attack happens, or availability is being attacked. Access control is controlling login to system. Like you want to go to a bank, your own bank, and you want to get your information, you must log in first, and you are allowed access. Or you work in a company or in a hospital, only the staff who are allowed to log in and access the information. So access control is making sure only those authorized individuals are allowed access to this system. Because, you know, there are many systems that there are many others who are trying to get into them, either to get information or delete information or attack them or do something, but they're not authorized to do. Every company in the world has its own server, its own system and data. Every hospital, every bank, every airlines, every government, every military, they have their own routers and their own servers and data, and they don't want anybody coming in from the outside world to access that system. And that's called access control, controlling only allowing authorized users or preventing unauthorized users to a system or a resource. So the word authorized is very important. It's a nice, easy way of making, you know, the correct definitions. Authentication, to authenticate somebody is to be certain who they are. Let's say I send you an email, or no, text on Messenger, and say, hey, this is Faheem. Are you coming to class this afternoon? Or something like that. And then signed Faheem. And you get the message. How do you know that message really is from me? You don't know who is at the other end who's sending the message. If you want to know for certain, beyond doubt, that's called authentication. That's why also in logging in and access, we want to know who you are. It's called authentication process. You type, you say, you know, here's the login and here's the password and here's my ID. Yeah, it could be somebody sitting pretending to be you, but found out your password. We might ask them another question. Say, well, listen, when was the last time you logged in? And we know that, and we see if it's, so that's an authentication question. So authentication is, if you are on exchanging messages with someone else, authentication is making certain that they are who they say they are, right? The person you're talking to is exactly what they are telling you who they are, who they claim to be. They make a claim. On the other end, somebody says to you, I am Faheem. If you are certain they're Faheem, then that's called authentication. Finally, non-repudiation. Non-repudiation, to make somebody not be able to say, I did not send the message when they actually sent it. So if you send me a message and then you change your mind, but now, you know, that message, you made me a promise or something, based on that, I've done so many things, and then you change your mind. And that can cost me a lot of loss, for example. So I say, come on, you promised you're going to pay me so much for this, whatever it is, house or car. Or now there was somebody else who wanted to buy it, but I turned the sale off because you wanted it. You say, no, I never sent you that message. That's repudiation. Now we can prove that you did. No one else in the world sent it but you. And it actually works in a court of law. It's acceptable. It's called non-repudiation. That's making certain that somebody denied that they've already sent a message. So if somebody did send a message and they tell you, I did not send it, we have a non-repudiation protection against that. They are really, we can figure out, we can tell exactly that you, beyond doubt, 100% you did send that message. So how are all these services made available? Through something called encryption. So let's get into encryption. And encryption, I'm going to be talking about encryption, but within the light of communication, right? So you're going to make sure that all the things we mentioned earlier on, not necessarily in a company or in a bank, but in messages exchanged between you and a bank, or you and a company, you and a friend. We want to make sure the message that you send to somebody remains confidential. What does confidential message mean? If I send her a message, a confidential message, what does that mean? What?
It should be between you and the message. No one else should be known.
Okay. All right. Or any other authorized person. Don't limit it. Use the word authorized. It's better, right? And the same with the rest of the terminologies. So now we're going to look at them from communication point of view, the security of communication, basically. So we're going to see if a message integrity, that means it has not been modified. When I send it to you and you receive it, they're exactly the same message. If it's been modified, and if it's unauthorized modification, then the integrity is violated, if there's an attack of integrity. Right, okay, so most communication and encryption, now we're talking about encryption, books and security, they always talk about user A and user B. Always. And then one author, one computer scientist or security scientist decided to say, right, instead of A and B, I'm going to give them names. And they called A Alice and B Bob. And everybody started using it. And now Alice and Bob are very, very famous personalities in encryption systems, right? And they're friends. They probably went to school together. And they were quite friendly together. And after school, they went into their separate ways, but they kept in communication. And the older days, back in the 80s or 90s, and we started having these phones, you know, but they're not digital phone. And you still have to make, you know, calls over wireless and wired. And then the internet came and they were absolutely delighted because now communication went cheaper, very, very cheap and very simple. And you can talk and you can send messages and videos and everything went happy, right? This is from the year 2000 onward. And well, you know, the internet even before the year 2000, we're talking about mobile phones as well. But yeah, communication kept on increasing, but started getting a little bit complex, got bigger and bigger. And network service providers and routers and so many devices, it got really complicated, but they still managed to communicate. But with the complexity came the attacks. So there's one person that went to school with them in the old days. Her name was Mallory. She's the bad one. And she wanted to cause them problems. Like she tried to contact them and give them false names and listen to what they're talking about. And then another one called Trudy. She was intruding between them. And she actually started sending Alice messages, tell her, hey, I am Bob. And they're trying to break up, you know, the friendship or the relationship between Alice and Bob. And Alice is so simple, you know, she believes it when Trudy says, I am Bob. So these are the kind of things. But then Trudy got even better. She was actually talking to the two of them at the same time. Like she used to send an email message or a message to one of them at a time. Now she can get online. She managed to talk to Bob and talk to Alice. And some messages going straight to Alice. Some message every now and again, she sends another message to Bob and make things really bad for them. And Alice and Bob didn't know what the other one was saying, and things were getting really bad. But the worst when Jackie came in, and she was the man in the middle. Like these are all attacks I'm talking about. This one is called man-in-the-middle attack. Somebody takes total control of a communication between two parties, steps in, sends a message to Bob, pretending to be Alice. Bob sends back. It gets the message, modifies it, changes it, and sends it again to Alice. So everything has to go through it. And really, that was a real bad attack. So there are many attacks in communication as well. Pretending, falsifying, masquerading, denial of service attack, hijacking. That's a man in the middle who taken over the actual line completely. So encryption started, came out, and they started using encryption, and that solved most, if not all, those problems. So how do we encrypt, and what do we mean by encryption? Encryption, very simply, you take a message that you can read, mix it up or change it. Now, you can't read it, nobody can read it, and send it over. And when the receiver receives it, there's a way to put it back the opposite way that the sender has mixed it up. This guy will unmix it in a certain way, and usually you need a key to do that. And then, so the receiver can read the message. So that message is really confidential. Nobody can read it, except this person who is at the end who can bring it back to its original shape. So how do they deal with messages? There are two ways. You either take your file or your big message, break it into blocks. Let's say 100 bytes each, or 100 characters, or 100 numbers, whatever they are. Take 100, encrypt them, and send them. Take the next 100. They call this block cipher. And there are other ciphers or encryption systems that they open the file, they take one character, mix it up, change it, send it. Take the next character. They take one symbol or one character or one byte, one bit at a time. And they call it stream ciphers. So we're either dealing with block ciphers or stream ciphers. Most of the time it's block cipher. But now, when we say they mix the data, they encrypt it, what do they actually do to it? And there are two techniques that are used in all encryption systems, either this or combination of both. One is called substitution. That means replace. For example, you take a word and you do substitution. Let's say this word Dublin. You want to substitute, you look at the character, you go through the characters of this word. D, replace it with another character. Let's say S. Whatever way, we'll find a way of why we picked the S, but there's a simple algorithm. And then we replace the U with an A, B with a K, L with B. In such a way now, the word Dublin, you cannot read it. That thing is completely different. So if you send it, if I say to you, where you're traveling to tomorrow, and you say Dublin, but it's encrypted. So anybody in the middle between us cannot really know, will not know what you wrote. But when I receive it back, the receiver can actually bring them back based on the same algorithm, and they can read the word Dublin and understand. So that's one way. It's called substitution. So if you are asked what's substitution cipher, that's replacing one character with another character, one symbol with another symbol. You take them one at a time. The other one is called transposition cipher. Transposition, that means that's the other way of encrypting information. You take a line, for example, of message or numbers or whatever, symbols. We call them symbols, so it could be anything. A byte could be numbers, but for now, let's just use characters because they're easier for us. Let's say you take a block, this kind of block, this is only 6 characters, the word Dublin. And what you do, you move the characters off their position. That's called transposition, changing the position. Move the characters to a different location. So the D was moved to the 4th character, the U was put in number 6, B was put in number 5, L moved to 2nd place. And also there is an algorithm that, why you move this to the 5th place and this one to the 2nd, so the receiver can unmove them. So this is another way of encryption. Now, which one is more secure, do you think, in your view? Which one is more difficult to figure out what the word is? The substitution or transposition? Substitution looks a little bit more difficult. as you can see. Of course, yeah. But remember, with substitution, this character, how many possible replacements do you think it's going to have? Say in the English language, let's say this is in English, 25 other possible values. So you can try all those 25. Like if you can have a program that try each one of those 25 and display them all in front of you, and does the same thing with the second character. Look at the top one. How many possible values of combinations you can have those characters moved around? Anybody knows? Did you say factorial? Yeah. So this is the number of characters is 6. Yeah. If you multiply 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2, it will give you the different probabilities. I don't know what the probabilities are for 6. You can find that out very quickly. So it looks at the front or the start, this one is safer. In fact, with that one there, if the block is a little bit bigger, the probabilities are so good, are so large, that if somebody wants to try them all, it'll take them such a long time to do it, more than 25 per character. So that's for certain. If the block gets bigger and bigger, the bigger the block, the more the probabilities. Right? This one is only 6. That's why, remember, that's why when you log into a system, they tell you, please use a long password. Why? Because if you use a 4-character password, there are programs that are going to go and take those 26 characters in English and have every possible combination that will make 4 characters, and they try attack your system and they're going to get it. Say within 10 hours. You make it 5, you increase that dramatically. You make it 6, you make it 10, 12 characters. It's going to be almost impossible to. And then you can increase the combinations, not just character. You can start differentiating between small character and capital characters. And you can also include the plus and minus and all. So all the rest of the symbols, that's why sometimes we say symbols. Anyway, these are the 2 ways to encrypt in today's encryption communication system. But they use both of them. There are advantages to transposition, there are advantages to substitution. But most new modern communication systems of this type, this is now the old kind of encryption system, but still in big use today. They take your message, change the characters, and then substitute it, and they go back again. This change the characters of the newly substituted one, the encrypted one, change the characters again, the positions, and then you get another message, substitute, change an A for something, and you keep doing that. You do it maybe 16 times. Now it's really mixed so well, and you send it. It's very, very, very secure system. Right, so, and this is the old system. They call it the old because they have a new encryption system that came out back in the 70s. So they call this the conventional. And they also call it the secret key because you and I need a key to undo that encryption. It has to be secret key. And also they call it symmetric because you and I will have exactly the same key. Both sides, the sender and the receiver, will have the same key, and that's why they call it symmetric. So there are 3 different names for the old conventional symmetrical secret key encryption system. Like you can be in an exam asked with any of those names. This is the old technique. But when we say old, it doesn't mean it's no good. It's the one that's still in use today. They're both now, today we use 2 systems. This system is called the symmetric and the asymmetric. The asymmetric is that you have a key and I have a different key. This is in the new system. Conventional, this is the old one. And they call it secret key. The new one is called public key, because my key will be made public. So we'll see how that works. So how does it work? We look at one example of symmetric system, the old systems. We look at one of the oldest recorded encryption systems in humanity, in the history of humanity. It's called Caesar cipher. Very simple, but it has all the features of an encryption system. So this is quite simple. You take a message and you want to encrypt it. You look at every character and replace it by a few characters ahead of it. For example, let's say, for example, you want to encrypt the word Caesar up at the top. You take C and change it to replacement. It's a replacement substitution cipher that we replace C with a character. 3 characters ahead after C, for example, or 4 or 7. I'll just say 3. So you go D, E, F. So the C is replaced by F. And the A is replaced by what? D. Yeah, okay. I thought you said C. I wasn't sure. Right, okay. So that's so easy, right? And the E is replaced by what at the very end? H. H, yeah. That's simple. And it actually works. It worked for hundreds of years. This guy was sending ciphered message to his military leaders around Europe and possibly around the Middle East and the world. Right, and the receiver, when they receive a ciphered message, to bring it back to reality, all they do, for example, if they find the letter D, they go back 3 places. They substitute it by A. The point is, of course, the enemies might find out very soon. They know, they can move their characters up and down. And then but they used to change the key. So the key we use here is 3. That means move forward 3 places or move back 3 places. But now let's change it to 5. Next message we send maybe 5. So even if the enemy discovered how we do it, they will not know it. They'll get something completely different again. But the sender and the receiver must have the number 5, agree on the number 5. And they should be changing those numbers. So, but if you want to program it, this is the way to do it. First, we give all our characters, let's say in English, it could be any other language with any different number of characters. And even in English, you can make capital and small, and you can also add numbers with them as well and all that. But Caesar didn't have it, and this is just to keep it simple now. So you have all the characters and give them numbers starting from 0. So in English, it's going to be from 0 to 25. Now, and we're going to have a key, whatever the key is. Now, anytime you want to encrypt, so in your program, you read a message. You take the character. First, convert. Let's say here's a message. 1 word. We want to send this message 1 word. We want to encrypt it. So first we take the message. We go and get the numerical value for each character off this grid. So we have a fixed grid. The encryptor has it and the decryptor has it. So you go and find out the numerical value for O, it's 14. So you get all the numerical value for every character. Right, we get it for 1 and we repeat it later on for each one. Now, O has number 14. Our key, let's agree on a key. So let's say we agreed on key 4. That means every character numerical value, add 4 to it. So the O that was 14, we add 4 to it and it becomes 18. And we go and get, what's 18? In the grid, it's S. So O is replaced by S. Now, a new program will go through this in half a second. Then the next character, N, is 13. Add 4 to it, 17. 17 is R. The next character is E. E is 4. Add 4 to it, it's 8. 8 is, whatever it is, I, and so on. Now, what happens if you get the letter Y? You add 4 to it. So when you get to the end, you have to recycle to the front. So, for example, if you are counting, you go 4. Maybe I'll do it on the screen. So, yeah. So it will be included in the recording. Right. So if, for example, you go to the letter Y, it's 24. Add 4. That means you go 4 steps forward. 1, 2, 3, 4, and it stops at C. So the Y is stopped at C. But if you want to program it, you do the mod operation. Everybody knows the mod function? The mod, that means divide by the number 26. So for example, 24 plus 4 is 28. Mod it by 26. What's 28 mod 26? You divide it and you take the remainder. Mod means divide this number by this number, ignore the initial number, take the remainder. So 28 divided by 26, the result is 1, and we have 2 remainder. You take the remainder, and that's your new character. So in computer program, 1 line of code will do the encryption. Of course, you need the loop, of course, so you go till the end of the message. So simple, so fast, so quick, and right, let's say that this is the decipher. The person at the other end got this message, 3SPH, makes no sense. It's just to see how good this system is. Right, can you bring it back? Well, let's try. First, here's the grid. He takes the ciphered message. Here's the ciphered message. Look at the grid. Go through each character. S is 18. Get the numerical value for each of these characters. I is 17. I is 8, and so on. And then to decipher, it's almost the same as the encryptions algorithm. It's in reverse. In Caesar cipher, instead of adding, you're subtracting. So 18 minus 4, we must have the key. If we don't have the key, we can't break it. So 18 minus 4 is 14, and you go to the grid and say, oh, that's letter O. For example, the I, which is 8 minus 4, it's 4, and that's the letter E, and so on. For example, the letter D, which is 3, minus 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's minus 1. That brings you to actually, where did, no, that's not the D. I'll find V, sorry, no. Okay, forget it. That's, I was gonna, see if there is a letter here, A. Let's say A, this A here. 0, it has the value 0. Minus 4, so you have the number minus 4. But you divide that by 26 and take the remainder. In fact, minus 4 modded by 26 will give us the 4, the number W, which is 22. The number 22, which is W. Doing it by hand, you walk backwards. So from A, you walk back 4 places. 1, 2, 3, 4. But this is how to do it in a program. Everybody understands this? Good. Every encryption system in the world, guys, has those 4. Well, these are the main parts of it. This is the conventional encryption. And why it's conventional? Because it's the same key. On this side, you take the plain message, pass it through this algorithm, which can be very simple or very complex. In Caesar's algorithm, it's only 1 line, but it needs the key. It takes the key and the character and produces the ciphered message. Nobody can read the ciphered message. The receiver will have a decryption algorithm. Usually it's the reverse of that algorithm. Sometimes it's the same, but you start backward. Like if you add 2 multiplied by 10, you divide by 10 and subtract 2 or something like that. And then finally, it will produce the plain text message. Now, decipher this message for me. Now, let me tell you one thing before you start. If you don't know the key, see, this time we know the key. I'm telling you the key is 3. But if you did not know the key, how can we break it? We can try every possible value of the key. And that kind of attack on a message. If you get a ciphered message, somebody says to you, here's a ciphered message. Can you decipher? You say, what's the key? We don't know what the key is. Oh, well, let's try every possible value of the key. Let's try the key 2, 3, 4, 5 until it makes sense. That's called brute force attack. If you don't know the key and you want to try every possible value, what is it called? Brute force attack. If you're asked what's brute force attack, it's trying every possible value of the key if you did not know the key. Of course, if the key is only small range, maybe it's possible to do. But if the key is billions and zillions of numbers, then, forget it. Now, decipher the top message for me. You have 1 minute. Use the grid. Okay, write down, maybe, I don't know. Let me get a copy of that. Let me get a copy of the grid. Okay, here's the grid, here's the message deciphered. I don't know about this one. Actually, there's no need for this one, is there? Let me get rid of this, and there are the two messages. Okay, what's the first message? Anybody? Okay, I usually have a chocolate, but I forgot to bring it with me today. For the first solution. Let me see. I hope I have. Yeah. Who got this message? Come on, guys. The first one, only the first one. W-R-E-H-R-U. This is a ciphered message. Say again? No, just read me the full message. You got it first, right? Okay, get me the next one. We'll get the next one. And let me see if I have chocolate first. I usually bring a can of. Oh. Who's going to get the next message first? Deciphered. See how quick and simple it is. And it's even quicker with a program. Read me the full message. Whoever reads it first correctly. Ah, sugar. Guys, come on. The key is 5 for the second one. They have to move back 5 places.
That is the question.
Pardon?
That is the question.
Yeah. Oh, maybe I think it's the same as the previous one I removed. In X, Y, and J. Let me see if I can undo this. Just to check that. Is this the same message as this? Yeah, I think it is. Maybe you're right, yeah. Yeah, it is the same message. Okay, so I didn't make a mistake, so. Okay, let me just get a confirmation and then I'll give you the chocolate. What's the message? Anybody got that message? Come on, guys, I can't be.
That's the question.
That is the question. Okay, then you got it first up there. I just wanted a confirmation. Thank you very much. Well done. Right. But be careful, make sure you don't have diabetes or something. Right, let's go. So you know how to encrypt. Guys, if you did not have the key, how would you decrypt this message if we did not know the key? Any idea? If you didn't know the key is 5, how would you do it? We use brute force attack. You know how would you do brute force attack? You try the key 1, 2, every possible value of the key, 3, 4, 5, 6, until the message makes sense. And you say, oh, that's the message. I'll give you another example on the tutorial. There'll be one more tutorial. Here's another message. No, forget it. Okay, let's go a little bit further now. Right, so what's wrong with Caesar's algorithm? Anybody can see anything good or bad? Well, anything bad about it? Any weakness? You know, if you did not know the key, you can write a program. Of course, if you knew the key, the program will take, you know, a quarter of a second or less. You go through it and print the entire line. But if you did not know the key and you put in a loop and you say, try key 1, 2, 3, 4 for I equals 1 to 26 or 25, try all the keys and print me the message. And they'll print 26 lines for you, and one of them will be so clear. That's called brute force attack. So the problem with Caesar's algorithm, it can be attacked by brute force very simply. You know, a program in less than half a second will print 25 messages for you. And one of them is going to be the right one with each key. So it can be attacked by brute force very easily. Why? What makes this system can be attacked very easily by brute force? Because the range of the key, where the key comes from, the key is just a number between 1 and 25. The range is very, very small. We can write a program that go through them all in 1 second. So that's one weakness. In the new systems that we have today, similar to Caesar's algorithm, but instead of a number that comes between 1 and 25, it's a number that comes 1 and trillion, zillion, billion number. This number is unbelievable, you can't even imagine it. Such a huge number, and the number, your key, is just one of those numbers. If you want a computer to go through it, it'll take thousands of years to try them all. So, this is your first idea. Any encryption system that has small range, that means it can be broken by brute force attack. How do we solve that? How do we make a system more secure? Make the key range very, very large. The larger, the better. And you can work out exactly how long it's going to take. The other thing about Caesar's algorithm that makes it also brute force attack is that, okay, the key is short, but also the instructions that we have to do each time is very simple. Only one instruction that takes 1/1000th of a second. In fact, we could do that in less than 100th of a second, the full 25 messages. So there's something else that should be a little bit, takes longer to do, and we call it more complex. The algorithm. The algorithm in Caesar's algorithm is very simple. What does simple mean? It doesn't mean, yeah, simple, we can do it. No, simple means takes very, very little time. Complex, it doesn't mean you cannot do it. No, we can do it, but it'll take very, very long time. And what do we mean by long time? Half a second, maybe. Half a second is very long time, because let's say a second. If you didn't know the key, and the key comes from trillion, zillion, billion keys, then imagine that second is going to be trillion, billion, million seconds. And that means about 10,000 years. So you need two things to make an encryption system more secure. Bigger keys, larger keys, and more complex algorithm. Right? If you're asked to design an encryption system or evaluate an encryption system, look at the key range and look at how many instructions are that you need to do to encrypt something or decrypt it. There should be hundreds or thousands of instructions. In fact, new modern systems, they do hundreds of thousands each time. They mostly they shift to the right, shift to the left, and them ORing and them, so all these different hundreds of instructions. But it'll take a bit of time. It'll take a bit of time in such a way it's still fast to do if you knew the key. It'll take you a second, But if you didn't know the key, it will take you 10,000 years. Right? That's how you need it to be, more complex. So complex means takes longer to do. Right. Now, there's something else is wrong with Caesar's algorithm. See, when we encrypted this message, we got the letter O, we encrypted it. What did we get out of the letter O? It was enciphered as S. Right, see the next letter O we found also gave us S. And if there's another letter O, it will also be replaced by an S. So if for some reason you realize, due to language similarities or whatever it is, you realize, oh, now I know every S we find, it means it was an O. Well, then you go through all your S's in that ciphered message, put them into O's, and then look at another letter that's the same, repeated the same. That's another weakness in encryption system. Any system that if you say encrypt the character A, for example, encryptor gave you Q, and then in the message there is another A, it gives you again Q, and then every time you encrypt an A in that message, it gives you the same character as a ciphered message. We call this mono-alphabetic cipher. That means it only gives you the same key for each character, or one character as a replacement of any character. It's called mono-alphabetic cipher. So the information will be on the slides, but just so you know. Okay, well, some people say, all right, how do they know? Even like, I know it's simple enough sometimes, but how could you tell which character is which? They say there is something in all languages. There's a feature in all languages, except one language in the world. But all other languages in the world, they have this feature or weakness or whatever you want to call it. Every language in the world is made up of a number of characters. But every word in that language is made up of a combination of some of these characters. Except in the Mandarin language, in the Chinese language. This doesn't apply to it. But every other language, if you take a book written in English or French, or Urdu, or whatever other language there are, Arabic, or any other language, Spanish, and you count how many character A, frequency of characters, how many times the A was used, how many times the B was used, C, and all that. It will be fixed in any book for a particular language. So in English, here's the fixed data. The most common character in English is the letter E. So if you write any message, that's a paragraph or a page long, this will apply. If it's a book, this will apply. So E is the most common character, then followed by a T, then followed by an A. So, how could that be helpful? Well, if you receive a ciphered message and you're told, can you break this up for us? Okay, let's do a frequency test. So you take the ciphered message and run it and see how many A's, how many B's, how many C's. And look for the most frequent character in the message. Let's say the most frequent character was P. You say in English, P is not the most frequent character. The most frequent character is A. That means every P now should be an A. It was A, somebody encrypted it, turned it into a P. That's why we have lots of P's. Normally we wouldn't have lots of P's. So you can bring back, by knowing the most frequent characters over one language, and if you run a program and get the number of counts of each character in the ciphered message, you'll be able to map them out and say, we got a very frequent character H. No, H is not frequent. Then every H, change it by an E. And then the second letter, let's say you found L. You say L is not the second most frequent character. The T, that means you go to every L and replace it back into a T. And very soon you'll be able to read that message. So this attack, cryptanalysis attack, is only done and only works on mono-alphabetic ciphers. Of course, if you replace it, if you have a message that you replaced A with a T, but then the next A you replace it with M, then this system does not work to break it. Okay, so encryption systems that are mono-alphabetic, they're weak systems. And that's what Caesar's system is also mono-alphabetic. So Caesar system has 3 problems so far. The key comes from a very small range. The key is very small. The algorithm is very simple. And finally, it's a mono-alphabetic cipher. And that's not all that's wrong with it. So newer modern systems, they are similar to Caesar's, but they got rid of these problems, all of them. The other and last problem, well, there are 2 problems. First, the number of keys. We have lots of keys. Why? Because if I want to communicate with you confidentially, nobody else can read the message, then you and I need to share a key. So if I encrypt a message, only you can read it, no one else. And if I want to communicate with you as well, then I need to have a separate key with you. And if you want to communicate with him, you need to have another separate key. So there are lots of keys. Like if there's 10 of us, for example, I need to have 9 different keys. And the other person next to me needs to have, one of the keys is going to be mine, but the other 8 are different. And the next person, he needs to have 7 more keys. So there are a lot of keys, and they're all secretive keys. Like if we work in a company, and the company says, okay, any message you send by your computer, we're going to encrypt it by a key and your friend. Just tell us who you're sending it to. So when you send my email to him, they'll go fetch his key, encrypt the message, and send it to him. So every message I send is going to be encrypted. So it means there are a large number of keys. You know how many keys? The number of keys depends on the number of users. I can't find it now, but it's n times n minus 1 divided by 2. No, or is it it's a plus? 10 times. So, for example, if you have 10 users, it's 10 times 9, 90, divided by 2, 45 keys. If we had 100 users, they're going to be 4,500 keys. Huge number. That's a very large number. And remember, they're all secret keys. They need to be, and they must be maintained secretively. So that's another problem. Too many keys. But the major problem that made it not possible, when the internet came around, they say, okay, let's kind of start having business and talk to people in remote places, distant places, not remote places, but they're so far away, we need to have a key. When I send you a confidential message, I must have a key. Well, then how do I take the key, I encrypt the message, send you the message. Now, how am I going to send you the key? You can't email it. You can't send it by text. You can't send it by post. You can't pick up the phone and say, listen, the key is 4789. No, because there are others listening to you all the time. There are people watching your messages, your email, So that's a problem. How do you actually distribute the key? In fact, the only way to securely and confidentially distribute the keys to meet face-to-face with the person you know. You can't even if you work in a company and there's 2 staff members, they don't know each other, it's not secure, because the other second person, if they don't know the first person who's going to give them the keys, how do you know that person is the one that could kidnap him and, so they send the enemy in his place? You need to know personally. So, key distribution is a problem in the old system. And what made key distribution is even worse. Imagine if I went to Brazil and I met my friend in Brazil or in China, and we met and we know each other, and I gave him the key, and I went back to Dublin. Now we can start talking securely, confidentially. Every message we encrypt, he encrypts back. But we have, we run a factory, or we run some sensitive business, or expensive business, or military, or whatever it is, something that there are other people interested who want to break that message between us. So what they do, every message, by the way, every message leaves your computer is available for those who want it. Like once it leaves outside the college, every message that leaves the college, it can be available to anybody who wants it. They can read it. They don't understand it, of course, because it's encrypted, but they can read it. 110 A, B, S. But they have all these messages. For 5 years, we're exchanging messages. And they never knew what they are. But then once they found the key. And once your enemy, your competitor finds the key, they can read all your past communication. All the letters you thought they were secure or confidential, they're no longer confidential. And all your friends, they won't tell you they found the key because they'll be reading the next 5 years' messages. And you're happily, sending a secure message. Hey, don't tell them this. And they already can hear it, can read it. Because they found the key. So another thing, it's not just good enough to send your friend a key or meet him and give him a key. You must change the key very frequently. Or else they'll be able to read all the keys since the last time you changed it or until the next time to change it, which can be years if you don't change it. So any good suggestions? How often, how frequent should you change the key? Is once a month good to change the key? Reasonable secure. That means they can only see, even if they do find any key, they can only see 1 month worth of messages. Any better suggestions? What's better than 1 month? Every month change the key. Every week.
2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks.
Depends with the.
No, our business is very sensitive. So, what do you think?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Anybody else has any better suggestion? Oh, yeah. Okay, so some people say every week, and some people say every day, some people say every hour. But in fact, what they do today, every message you send, they change the key. Of course, it's not possible just using this system because it means, you have to go and meet your friend before every message. But in fact, now what we do, I create a key, a random key, use it to encrypt the message, send it to you, and then this key, we use the new modern system to encrypt this key when we send you the key. And they call this key a session key. It's called the session key. So what's a session key? How would you define a session key? How would you define a session key? What's a session key? If you got a question in the exam, what's meant by a session key in encryption systems? It's a key that's only used once. That's called a session key. Use it once to send a message, encrypt it and forget about it. And something else, guys, to make the system also more secure. So these are all ideas to make the system more secure. Make the key very large. Make the algorithm very complex. Don't use monoalphabetic systems. And change the key very frequently. In fact, in brackets, use session keys. What else? And when you finish with a key, guys, let's say we finished, for the last month, we used 30 session keys. They have them all printed out, the messages, they're all printed in the key on top of each one of them. They're finished, you throw them in the bin. You know something? Every, again, sensitive organization, they actually hire people to go through their bin and find out, is there any information in that bin? And what they do is they find your old keys. You say, that's fine, they're old. Finished, we're finished with them. But even, for example, there's a horse race in Brazil, right? And I knew every horse that's going to win because there's some crowd who are making sure that horse wins. I know which horse is going to win every week. So I send you a message, send my friend in Brazil message, encrypted message. I say this horse is going to win, and he goes and he buys tickets on this horse and he makes money. We're making a lot of money. It's illegal, of course. But we made a lot of money and we keep throwing away the keys. And she says to me, why do you throw away the keys? I say, we're finished with them. So what if they knew the horse that won last week or 2 weeks ago? It's no good for them anymore. The race is different each time. And each time we're going to use a different key anyway. He said, no. Now they can see your previous keys, long list of them. Sometimes there is a logic in your head. There's an algorithm how you produce those keys. And they can deduce that. For example, if I had, last week I had, my key was 13, 17, 21, 25. What's my next key? 29. See, I had a rhythm. I was adding 4 each time to the keys. So maybe you might have even a more complicated algorithm, but they might be able to analyze it, and from your previous past keys, then maybe they can predict your future keys. So the recommendations, never throw away keys. What do you do with them? Any suggestions? Destroy them. That's a good word. Destroy old keys, even if they are useless, right? So, as symmetric system has so many problems. As we can see, we talked about it's weak. Okay, we can make it stronger. We can make the key bigger, that's fine. And we can make the algorithm more complicated. And that's what they did, and they work perfect. It's a perfect system, except for one little problem, and that's key distribution. Remained a problem. But luckily, back in the 70s, about 50 years ago or 45 years ago, these guys came up with this idea. Well, the idea was around from the 40s and 50s as mathematical kind of idea, but it was implemented. They actually they designed a system, and they implemented this system, and it's called the public key encryption system. And what does the public key encryption system look like? They said the system is simple. I'm going to give you the idea. You can read the notes later, but the idea is simple. If you have 2 keys, I hope let me change that. I just want to change the camera. I don't know if we can change the camera. I don't even know how to change it here at this. Oh. Now, guess what? We're going to leave it. Right. There's an algorithm that you run it, takes 1 second to run, and it produces 2 numbers, a pair of numbers. This is how public key encryption system operates. This is the idea. You get the idea, the rest of it's simple. If you don't get the idea, you never get how it works. The idea is simple. You run a program, it gives you 2 numbers. These pair of numbers are strongly related, very strongly related. How are they related? 2 ways, but the first one, if there's a formula, there's a mathematical operation, simple mathematical operation, something. If this key is used in that formula, you give it a character, like a character as a numerical value of a character, and you run it into this formula. You put the character and this key. So this key will produce another character. It will encrypt. So this key will encrypt. It's like you have a door and you lock it. Nobody can open it. Only this key can open it. The key that locked, it cannot open. And there's no other key in the world that can open it except this twin pair. I call them twins. Nobody calls them twins. I call them twins because they're like brothers or sisters, but they're very strongly kind of related mind-wise. This one locks, only this one unlocks. And if this one locks, only this one unlocks. So either one of them can do the locking. But even if this locks a door, cannot unlock it. That means if it encrypts a message, it cannot decrypt it. Only this key in the world can decrypt it. Now, I'm going to start again. Now, the second relationship between them, so the first relationship is very clear. If one locks, it cannot unlock. Nobody can unlock except the twin key, the other key. The other one, if you saw this number or this key, there is no way of knowing what the other key is, mathematical or otherwise, so far. And if you find a technique of finding or a formula or something that will find the other key, the whole system will collapse. That's been running for 50 years now. All security systems depend on it. So, this is how it works. You generate a pair of keys with very simple algorithm. It's at the end of these slides, but we don't have to go through it or know it. I just put it there for your reference if you want to see it. But now we have 2 keys. And I'm gonna, this red one, I just have it marked red, I'm gonna keep it to myself, show it to nobody. And I call this my private key. Not secret key, they call it the private key. Because the secret key is used in the old system. This other key, I'm gonna announce it to everybody and publish it and show it to everybody and say, guys, this is my public key. If you wanna send me a message, you take my public key, which everybody knows, it's not secret, and take that message and encrypt it using my public key. The encryption system is very easy to do. It's very complex, takes a long time, but it's very easy to do. The program, probably one line of code to encrypt the message. It's a mathematical formula. But anyway, you take my public key and encrypt the message. You can't even unlock that message. You cannot decrypt the message. Who can decrypt the message? Only this key that I have. And that makes sure the message is confidential. Nobody can read it except me, because I am the only one who has this key. So make sure I don't let anybody in the world know this key. And you can change it again. You can create 2 new pairs, and you can, it's so easy to do it. So that provides confidentiality. Now, so the idea, if I ask you, using the public key encryption system, how could you send a confidential message to somebody? How would you say, you go to the receiver, well, you don't go, but you take the receiver's public key. Remember, the receiver, which is me in this case, you never have access to my private key, so don't make a mistake. You say, I go to the receiver and take their private key. Nobody has access to this. There are only 3 keys available to you. Your 2 keys and my public key. So if you want to send me a confidential message, which key would you use? Use my public key. You need to remember this. You always think of the receiver. If I tell you A is a sender, B is a receiver. A wants to send a confidential message to B, then you say A takes B's public key to encrypt the message. That's good. Let's do it in another way. I have these 2 keys, and I'm going to send you a message. I should use your public key, but imagine I did not use your public key. I use my private key. I use this key that I have, no one else has in the world, to encrypt the message. I locked the message and I sent it out. Remember, the message, once it goes out, everybody has a copy of the encrypted message. But in the previous one, I'm the only one who could read it. Now I encrypted the message using my private key and I send it out. Everybody got a copy of the message. Who can open that message? Anybody who has my public key can open the message, because remember, I locked it with my private key. So that's not a confidential message, right? It's not. There's no confidentiality. Everybody can read it, because my public key is public. Everybody knows it. Everybody who wants it, they can have it, and they can read any message I send. I encrypt with my private key. But what's the idea in that? What's the point? If you can decrypt a message using my public key, then that's a proof that that message was encrypted using my private key, because there's no other key in the world that can decrypt it. You understand now? So if you can decrypt a message with any public key, only that twin key must have created that message. And that's a proof, because no one else has this key except me, and that's a proof that I was the originator, the sender of that message. I am the one who encrypted the message. What's the proof? If I ask you, how do you know for certain I sent that message? You say, hey, because we used your public key to read it. There's no key in the world that can read it. If I encrypt a message with my private key, there's no other key in the world that can open that message except my public key. And that's now how we, in this system, the new system, we can provide authentication. So if I send you a message, you know for certain it came from me, from no one else. With the older system, there's a bit of an issue, because there are 2 people that have the key. In the old system, remember, in the conventional, in the Caesar's algorithm, 2 users have the key, the sender and the receiver. Imagine that we find a message that was encrypted by that key, a suspicious message. Maybe the sender or the receiver was not a good person for some reason. But they go to court and he says, you sent me this message. No, you sent me this message. The judge will not be able to say, because they both have the key, the same key. But with this system, it's now accepted in all courts, at least in Europe, America, Canada, that in a court of law, if somebody sent you a message encrypted with their private key, then it's authenticated, and they also cannot deny it. They cannot say, well, I never sent you the message. Hold on, that's non-repudiation. Remember we talked about non-repudiation? If I encrypt a message using my private key, and you act upon it, and then I say, I didn't really send that message. Hold on, we have a proof. What's the proof? You actually can decrypt that message. Any message you can decrypt with my public key, I must have sent it. The courts accept that. So the new system provides non-repudiation, it provides authentication, it provides confidentiality, it basically provides everything. And out of the authentication, this fact that I only have one key that no one else has in the world, and I can use it, a bank, if I send a message to my bank and I encrypt it with this private key, the bank they have my public key, they can decrypt it, and if it works, they say, okay, this guy sent it, we have a proof. We can authenticate the message. It was sent by Faheem because we can decrypt the message using Faheem's public key. The message must have been encrypted by Faheem's private key, and he's the only one in the world that has it. And that's what they use now for digital signatures. So digital signature, when you hear the word digital signature, think of public key encryption systems. You have two keys, one of them you'll keep it to yourself. That's your private key. Nobody else in the world has that key. If you encrypt a message with that, we can all prove, the bank can authenticate it, we can check it, we can go to court to prove that you did send it. How? Because we can use your public key to decrypt. Right? So the public key either normally offers authenticity or confidentiality. Either send you a confidential message. If I send you a message, I use your public key. That means when that message is encrypted, you are the only one who can read it. And, or it can offer confidential or authenticated message. So the authenticated message is the one that you know it came from me. And but remember, it's not confidential. I can send a message encrypted with my private key. Everybody gets it. They all know it's from me, but it's not confidential. If I want to make it both confidential and authentic, I have to encrypt it twice, and you have to decrypt it twice. I must first encrypt it with my private key, so now there's proof it came from me, and then I take that encrypted message, encrypt it again with your public key. So only you can read it. So you might have to listen to this again in order for it to sink in. But what's wrong with this system? This is a fantastic system. What time do we finish today? Okay, so there are only one thing wrong with this. This is the last slide. It's perfect. It offers everything. It has very little number of keys. Like if I had 100 users, every user needs a pair of keys. Like there'd be total 200 keys. Remember, the last one was 4,500 for 100 users. With this one, every user only needs a pair of keys. And even one of them is not private. So you don't have to worry about its security. We want to broadcast it. We want to tell everybody. So if you had 100 people, you only had 100 keys that are confidential. They need to be maintained secretively by individuals, while the other 100 are public. So the number of keys is very small. And it's also secure. In fact, they use a key of 2,500 bits. See this size of key? The older system now, the conventional system, the new modern systems that use the conventional idea, the key is 512 bits long. So it's a huge number. This one is even huger. So it's very, very, very large number. Forget about brute force attack. But what's wrong with it? The only thing wrong with it is it's slow. Because the encryption operation is just full of power, creating numbers to the power. So you don't need to know this, but this is, if you take any character, and the key is, for example, the key is 711. You have to multiply this number, 700, like this number there represents a character. Let's say character A is 65. And the key, each key consists of two numbers actually. So it will power itself by the first number, multiply by itself so many times, and each time it will multiply itself by the second number. So just in simple words, every character is going to maybe have about 1,000 mathematical operations. Multiplication or powering, and multiplication and division. And multiplication and division are very slow. They are not logical operations, but still. So the problem with this system is it's a slow system. It's perfect. It offers everything else: authenticity, confidentiality, non-repudiation, digital signatures. These are all advantages of the new system, the public key over the conventional encryption system. But what's wrong with it? It's slow. That's the major problem with this system. So because it is slow, it's not really used a lot. Right? There's the table of the differences. Right, so because it is slow, we don't use it anymore as an encryption system. What we do, if I want to send you a file, especially for large files, if you're doing Messenger, you're only sending 80 characters or 100 characters, you can do a public key, it's fast enough. Like instead of a quarter of a second, going to half a second. But still, half a second still within a range that's still fast enough for us. But if you want to transfer a video, you want to encrypt a video, it'll take you hours to do it by the new system. It'll take you minutes to do it by the older system. And they have the same level of security. So this is what they do today in all communication systems in the world. Especially for files, slightly large files. You take the file, you create a new session key, a new key. Encrypt that file with that key. Now you can send the file safely, but now you have the key. How do you send the key? You use your public key, get your friends, the receivers, public key, take it, encrypt this key. So we use the new system to encrypt the keys, because the keys are reasonably small. Reasonably small, as in, is not a file. So that gets encrypted quickly. So now we have the file that's encrypted using the old system with a key. That key is now encrypted with the new system, and we put the two of them together and we send them one after the other. So your friend will receive the key and the encrypted file. First, the key is encrypted. It has to use their private key to decrypt the key. So they use the public key encryption system to take the key and then use that new key that they got for conventional to decrypt the big file. Okay, guys. Thank you very much. Any ideas, any questions, this is your last lecture, so, right. Good luck to you, and you still remember you have one more tutorial to do. It'll be on Moodle this afternoon. You have a week to do it. Yeah, hopefully you'll receive your results before the break, before the celebration. And I want to wish you the very best of luck, and I hope everything goes well for you. And take care of yourselves, guys, and stay safe. Good luck.